Good evening, good morning, wherever you're watching from, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Gigi Report. We're glad that you tuned in, and those of you that are following us on television, welcome. Those of you that are following us on the social media platforms, we are live on Elevate TV Kenya, Facebook page, YouTube channel as well. So karibuni, welcome, and let's get this conversation underway. Today we are going to we're going to discuss a subject we're calling taxation, citizenship, and the rule of law. And I'm going to be giving you the background of this conversation. And I have in the studio my friend and guest, Philip Mwangale. Karibu sana.
Asante sana. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's been a while.
All right.
I'm glad to be back.
Welcome back. Welcome back. So ladies and gentlemen, the reason for our discussion is there is this particular statement. You will hear it sometimes: no taxation without representation. This was something that came up in the Americas, in the US in particular, way before their independence, when there were 13 different colonies under the Great British rule. And the American citizens of that time, it wasn't a nation yet, they felt that they weren't going to accept taxation from their British colonizers without being represented in the British Parliament. So that controversy is actually what led eventually to the formation of the great American nation, which we know. I think they have celebrated more than 200 years of independence, and that became like a framework and a basis of nation building. So today, as Kenyans, you keep hearing people complaining about taxation because obviously, as a citizen, you just can't be taxed without your consent or without being represented. We're going to go into all that, and basically, one of the big questions we are asking is, have Kenyans become powerless in the face of big government? So that then, when prices go up, you probably have no way of stopping that from happening. If taxes increase, perhaps you feel helpless. Those are the questions we're going to ask ourselves. So welcome to another episode of the Gigi Report. And as always, the Gigi Report is a platform where we deal with we go into deep, honest conversations, and we deal with big ideas on matters social, political, economic, and philosophical and theological where possible. Today, we're going to look at governance, and we're going to look at taxation issues and the rule of law, and this is going to be exciting. So get ready and follow this conversation, and please remember to share. Welcome. Okay, so my brother Philip.
Yes.
I had you here last time, and we were, discussing on issues of leadership and governance. Mm-hmm. And so we left a conversation which would have wanted to follow through. Mm-hmm. And so today I want us to address ourselves to a number of issues. So we're going to look at the issue of tax. There is an unspoken conversation about tax. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to look at the role of citizens, citizenship, and then the rule of law and how that is shaping. Mm-hmm. So let's begin by, first of all, I would like you to introduce yourself and tell us what you are up to. And then we're going to try and address ourselves. The first issue is, as someone who advocates for the civil rights of citizens, against obviously oppression and exploitation, and we're going to talk about exploitation.
Yes.
How do you see our justice system advancing? All right.
Yes.
So first of all, you can start by telling us what you are up to, and then let's talk about how our justice system is advancing in the light of civic rights of Kenyan citizens. Very good.
Thank you for having me. My name is Philip Mwangale. I am a lawyer by training. but a leadership and governance consultant by deployment.
Right.
So I establish order out of chaos, basically.
Okay.
To the question you've asked, where are we as regards matters justice and matters civic rights?
Yes.
What we call socioeconomic rights, because
Right.
we have political and then socioeconomic rights. And when you look at our 2010 Kenyan Constitution, we gave to ourselves very elaborate rights that one ought to be performed horizontally in the sense that citizens ought to have some obligations towards each other, and then vertically where the government ought to provide certain things for the citizen. So when you're talking about socioeconomic rights, you're talking about rights that relate to health, that relate to water, and matters tax, which you're talking about.
Right.
And I can say that we have made great strides as a country when you relate that to where we have come from.
Right.
Because before, pre-2010, as late as 2005 towards 2010, you had very little of government effort into socio-economic rights. But now we are at a place where a citizen can actually go to court and claim that the government has not done enough to ensure that they're receiving adequate water. You would hardly have seen that in the pre-2010 dispensation.
Right.
So we have made huge strides when it comes to matters civic rights, especially. When you talk about implementation, we may not be there where we are fully implementing socioeconomic rights, and you would hear people talk about Article 43 rights. We are not yet fully there, but slowly by slowly we will make progress, and that is the hope that I have and Kenyans should have, that we would make progress.
Okay. Yeah. So Article 43, you say?
Yes.
That's part of the Constitution. Yeah. So and maybe for our viewers, I don't know how much you can open up that space called Article 43. What are some of the provisions? Because in what shape are they, expressed in the Constitution? You see, I think a lot of people know we have a constitution called the Kenya 2010 Constitution. Of course, if you're not a lawyer, you probably aren't bothered. You have read, but you can't quote any of the lines. And sometimes even when you hear people talk about their rights, they wouldn't enumerate them. So maybe perhaps you could speak into that a little bit.
Yes, one of the things that is important, and we have seen the government trying to get towards, is that the Constitution says that every citizen has the right to the highest attainable standard of health. And I think we have seen the government trying to achieve or move towards universal health coverage.
Yes.
That is one. Number two, you have the right as a citizen to proper sanitation. That is something that is often overlooked, but it is a right that is owed to you. You have a right to adequate supply of water. I think Nairobi residents know that
they are being exploited.
Yes, they are being exploited. So these are some of the rights that are socio-economic rights.
Okay.
When you're looking at matters insurance, matters tax, and back to tax.
Yes.
We are looking at rights that accrue to the individual, which are not necessarily political, but they are necessary for the development of the whole person.
Okay.
When we talk about Article 43 rights, one of the things, and I've already mentioned that they are both horizontal and vertical.
Yes.
Now, if somebody is breaching your right to healthcare, breaching your right to good sanitation, people discharging garbage and effluents, next to your doorstep,
yes,
you have a right to petition court and ask that a declaration is made against them. So those are horizontal. Vertically, where the government is charged with the mandate of, for example, providing adequate water, then this is mostly to the Nairobi residents. You have a right to petition court, for example, and demand.
Right.
It's not just necessarily petitioning court. That is a forum of last resort.
Yes.
But you can demand from your government, because you are paying taxes,
yes,
that the government provides these services as a matter of right and not privilege.
Okay. And of course the law assumes, or rather the law bides both government, and we're going to come to what the role of government
Yes.
is. The law abides government to towards acting in fulfillment of those rights.
Yes, yes.
And then it kind of also empowers the citizen to know what to expect. Because the other thing that the Constitution actually does express is that the Constitution itself is what we have covenanted to ourselves.
Yes.
So we made these laws for us. So it's not really the government. The law is not for the government. It's for all of us.
Yes.
And so it's like we are saying, look, this is the relationship, and that's how this is how it will be governed. Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, so Philip, as you know very well, Kenyans are interesting lot, including Christians and non-Christians. One of the things, one of the observation I made is the idea of people deferring so much to government. And often the phrase is serikali saidia. And then, of course, when the government does actually answer that call and comes and helps or saidias, then the government kind of like becomes this demigod up there. So you can cry to government and they can come down and help us and stuff like that. What is the role of government? And do you think that the relationship between government and citizens and government is kind of like not very clear at the moment?
That is true. One of the tragedies we found ourselves in, and it's not just for Kenya as a country, but for the continent, was that when the colonial masters left, they left a government that we didn't know how to manage. Previously, we had our own small governments in the small communities. We knew how to handle those because they had been there for a long time. There was a system, there was an institutional memory, I would say, traditional institutional memory.
I like
that. The colonial masters left.
Yes.
And then, you have individuals who are left to their own devices. That, you now have a country that was not there before. There's a geographical area that you're supposed to govern.
Right.
And along the way, I think Africans have been learning on the job because this, Kenya was not Kenya before.
Yes.
We were just communities spread across the continent.
Yes.
But that said, I think where we are, and especially as a country, over 55 years after independence and after self-rule, we should have gotten to a point where we appreciated that government was for our own benefit. Government was for the sake of structuring society. But I think, and I will credit this to the leaders who were there before, and not all of them, a few of them, who made sure that government remained a tool of subjugation, because that is what the plan of the colonial masters was. So some of the people who took over in the African continent continued the subjugation, theme across board. So the citizen began interacting with government as they did the colonial masters.
Right.
So it was the government issuing directives to the citizens, the government, doing so and so against the citizen, and the citizen is now at the mercy of government. But what government is supposed to be is an enabler of society. Government is supposed to be an enabler of the citizen.
Right.
When you're talking about production, government is an enabler of production. Government is an enabler of the economy. But I think we're at a point where the citizen feels that government is a suppressor of production. Government is a suppressor of development.
Yes.
So when there is a law that has been passed, and that law is beneficial, for example, to farmers, farmers would feel government wants to take us out of business. Government wants to do this as against us. Government wants us to perish. But it should not be that way. I think what government should be is a friend of the people, because it is the people who put governments into place.
Actually,
so that relationship has not been the best.
Yeah, it's true. And maybe, especially for our young people, Philip, I will tell you why sometimes I like having these conversations. It's because what you see young people, writing about and complaining about. Because everyone has their own view of what government should be.
Yes.
When I was growing up, when government was government, if you saw a GK vehicle, a vehicle, especially the Land Rover, the famous Land Rover, land in your village, you knew you are in trouble. So the government was was powerful and had the power, you know, it had the monopoly of violence and rule of law. I mean, to put things in order. So I think the old picture we have is a government, powerful government.
Yes.
But what you are saying is that I think there is a disconnect between what we perceive government to be and what really then government is.
Yes.
You know, in respect. So that relationship needs a bit of clarification.
Yes.
Do you think that civil education would help in clarifying so that then the citizens' rights are more elevated and people are more clarified, so they don't have to fear government, initiative. They can stand up to it and say, look, yeah, your government, we are citizens, and you have no power over us or something like that. Do you think there is a gap there?
Yes, I think ignorance is the greatest undoing of any community.
Yes.
There's a presumption. Just this morning, I was having a discussion with a few people on voter registration and how civic education has not been done. And I think there is an assumption that is made that because anyone has gone through the Kenyan education system, then they ought to understand what government is. They ought to understand how government works and you know how these arms of government work.
Yes.
But I think we know that most of the time, most of this information is given so that people pass exams. So you'd find somebody who has excelled in history or in GHC as we did it then,
yes,
and they have clearly no understanding of the arms of government or separation of powers.
Yes.
So I think civic education ought to be done, but in a bid to make sure that citizens are appreciating the place of government and their role as citizens, because it's not just the place of a citizen to elect and then sit back and wait for another election. The citizen actually ought to be participating in government. I think we ought to demystify what government is, because as it stands, we only know government to be three arms. But there's a fourth arm, the arm of the citizen, the office of the citizen.
All right.
Who needs to be active day in, day out.
Yeah. By the way, you can elaborate the three arms, the three that we know, and then also I like the idea of the fourth arm of government. Yes.
So when most of the time when people are talking about government, they're only referring to the executive, the president, the cabinet, and whatnot. But aside from the executive that we know that has matters or issues to do with policy and making sure that policy is implemented, you have the legislature that crafts laws and does real representation.
Exactly.
I think most of the time we often just tie the legislature to making laws and regulations, and we forget that their representative aspect is even larger than just making laws and regulations. And then we have the judiciary that is tasked with now interpreting the laws and in some instances enforcing what has not been enforced by the executive arm. So those three arms. But the fourth arm, which I insist, and in this day and age, the role of the citizen has to be very active, is that office of the citizen. So that if you're electing somebody into office, you don't leave them to their own devices, because we understand that the human nature is desperately wicked.
Yes.
So because we know that, we must keep people in check. We must hold them to account, and not just every 5 years, because I think we have left the role of citizen as an accountability manager to every general election. But we must be watching our MCAs, making sure that they're actually doing what they said they will do.
Yes.
They're doing what we sent them in those offices to do.
That's true.
So I think if we understood government as all of us, because government is how we are managing ourselves.
Absolutely.
And you can't, delink yourself from self-management. If it is self-rule, then it means that we are all ruling ourselves.
Absolutely. And I like, Philip, what you're saying, self-rule. Again, maybe we can do a bit of another small lesson in civics.
Yes.
When we say that we gained self-rule, by that we actually meant technically that the British stopped ruling us,
Yes.
and then we started ruling ourselves. So basically, it's up to us,
Yes.
as citizens of Kenya, to rule ourselves. And if we rule ourselves badly, it's
Yes.
really us.
Yes.
No one is going to come.
That is
Britain isn't going to come back.
Yes.
They are very busy right now doing Brexit.
Yeah.
So they can't be bothered. So it is really like when we say self-rule, it means that it is we citizens of Kenya who rule ourselves. And it is up to us how we rule ourselves. If we rule ourselves badly, it's really us, the fourth arm, the office of the citizen. I would like you to touch a little bit about representation, because I want us to return to it later. There's a sense in which people don't quite appreciate how important representation is, because technically, you know, if you go back all the way to the classic Roman and the Greeks, when they were developing the system of, demo,
Yes.
meaning the masses, cracy, rule. The idea of democracy, the way the Greeks did it, although it was just men who voted or who made the rules, they would come together, in one place and decide the rules that are going to govern them. Of course, the cities the nations were much smaller. There were city-states, so really it wasn't a very big population.
Yes.
So fast forward to 21st century, we have something equivalent to ruling ourselves, but through representation.
Yes.
I think I would like you to speak into that, so that it's clear to people that the reason why we have parliament and we have MPs, members of parliament, and all that, it's because we have to have representation.
Yes. And I would borrow what we have given to ourselves in the Constitution, that the sovereign power belongs to the people.
Right.
So that sovereign rule is people-centered, but we have chosen to exercise that sovereignty and that power indirectly.
Yes.
Because not all of us would make decisions about where the country is headed. We might have as divergent as we have 40 million Kenyans.
Different Kenyans.
Yes, having different ideas. But then we task that responsibility to a few individuals who can then do it in a centralized manner. And that really is the essence of representation, that we can have some order, because if all of us were making the decisions left, right, and center, then there would be a problem. The other important aspect about representation is to have a sense of accountability, that you can hold certain institutions and certain individuals to account for actions that proceed from the offices that they have been given. But if the idea of representation is misunderstood, then it would appear that people are only seeking jobs. Those who are coming in as MCAs are only seeking to be employed by the people.
Absolutely.
I think that notion is wrong, because if people are seeking employment, then they are just there to earn a keep. And I think we have heard that in the last couple of years, that people are just there for employment.
Absolutely.
They will get their salary, and that is it. They will
No,
do their bare
employment
minimum.
in Kenya is in short supply.
Yes.
And we happen to know that when you become a member of parliament, the compensation is quite handsome.
It is
so
huge.
why shouldn't I also dip my hand into
into the citizens' pocket? So I think it goes both ways. And now that these people are picked from society, you would not expect them to have a proper understanding of representation, because the society itself does not appreciate democratic representation as it ought to be.
Yes.
Because if that was the case, then we would be electing people who understood their function. We'll be electing people who are actually a representation of our desires, our aspirations as Kenyans.
Absolutely.
But if we take it as, a source of employment for our people, then we lose it.
You're very right, Philip. And I remember, I think, in the early years, formation of this country, to be a member of parliament was something that was something people aspired to.
Yes.
A few people aspired to. And there was always a sense of this person truly will represent us. And that's why in those days, 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, maybe a little bit early 80s, Parliament was a place where you found real, honest, senior citizens. And some people represented their region for, in subsequent,
years, yes.
Whatever. But today, Philip, have you seen how many people wants to be members of parliament? What does that tell you?
It goes to show that we have really diluted the place of leadership.
Yes.
Because then, as you've rightly mentioned, people understood what leadership was. And people who are getting into offices of leadership were people of substance. And then people understood that leadership was not just an issue of the function you are performing or the office you are holding. Leadership was character. Yes. I think that is what is lacking in this age. And I can assure you that in 2022, in as much as we are praying that things will be different, one of our unfortunate realities will be that we would have more goons than good people in parliament and in our county assemblies.
Absolutely.
Because this and the people who are presenting themselves, offering themselves up for election, are that kind of individuals. So we are likely to see that happening, and that means that if the citizen is not careful, then we are likely to see an erosion of government further, because these people will not be getting in to give services to Mwananchi. They will be there for self-aggrandizement. They will be there to enrich themselves. So the citizen must make sure that when you are going to the ballot, you are actually speaking your aspirations. And if your aspirations are really that you should have a goon in office, then so be it. But I doubt that those are the aspirations of Kenyans.
Absolutely. Okay, very good. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I believe you're following this conversation. We're talking about taxation, citizenship. I know we've dealt a little bit about citizenship and representation. We are not finished yet. We still have a lot of more. I still have a lot more questions for our guest here, Philip. I believe you're learning something. Remember, 2022 is around the corner, and we're going to be going back to the ballot boxes to choose these representatives. And I think it's only fair that we have some level of understanding what it exactly means, our civic rights as citizens, and the need for representation. So we'll go into a very short break. Don't go away. We'll come back and continue from where we've left it. God bless you. See you shortly.